Dr. Najat, good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, Musa. Very well. How are you?
I'm doing great, and thanks for joining us. Would you like to please start your introduction formally?
Thank you so much for today. I'm delighted as part of Gazette Advisory Group to be a speaker at today's event hosted by Berkeleyme Middle East on the Inspirational Arab Women 2021. It's my second stint as speaker for this company. My focus today really is on the new sort of domain shift of Arab women as the matriarchs of the Arab Family Office.
I think you are one of the unique talents I have ever seen in my life. You have a blend of West, you are a blend of Arabs, and so would you like to share your thoughts of the day?
Yes, thank you. As I said, my focus is looking at how the Arab Family Office is changing rapidly, particularly those championed and pioneered by the female leader for whom strategy, building on her father's legacy and remaining keeper of the finances and the recruitment of new trusted advisors and professionals has become incumbent upon her and is imperative, more so now than ever. Also of great importance within the private office domain is looking at how sort of private banking side of things is gaining greater importance as investment advice, as the obsolete strategies of the old approach to family offices is becoming quite obsolete. These are strategies used by the patriarchs of 30 years ago or so, which are being rapidly swept aside for a newer approach where women are looking at taking in investments in tech, blockchain, biotech is of great importance, particularly with the pandemic, startups, particularly those led by women, and taking stakes in pre-IPO opportunities. And sort of private bankers are gaining momentum also, where they can offer more than the conventional. So my focus really is looking at how women are looking at the increasing importance of the ecosystem of access to funding for companies led by women, where the female matriarch, as it were, would look at these investment opportunities with the greatest scrutiny. Also, they look at equal pay, equality of opportunity, and the board diversity of a company prior to investing in it. So the more principled Arab female principal is now thinking twice about where they invest in the sort of non-diversified and non-inclusive companies where boards are not well represented. So if we look at the sort of the global ecosystem of how family offices are being run nowadays by more and more women in the Gulf region, they're looking at the whole comprehensive concept of how companies are structured, diversity, and also the focus on maintaining wealth that they've inherited, as well as a great return on their investments in the future.
Oh, that's great. So what you think that in terms of women leadership, women investment, what private offices should do? Because this question I would explain you before in your reply to it, that in, say, in UK and Europe, because it's a tax economy, and if you do any social work, you get some tax reliefs as well. On top of this, you do a contribution to society. But when you see the Middle East region, the Arab region, they are tax-free, and they are actually excited to work on certain projects. So in that context, what is your advice that what family offices should invest in women in which way?
Well, that's a very poignant question, Musa. Thank you for that. But let's firstly examine where we currently are in the family Arab office space. The current trend is a recurring challenge of intergenerational control particularly amongst siblings who are inheriting the wealth, and also of sort of fixed asset transfer. It's a very, very important moment where Arab families are fortifying or trying to fortify their wealth management within a more formal sort of corporate structure. And for example, incredibly at the moment, many Arab family offices that I know of, where the patriarch is in their 70s, still have not formally appointed a legal successor. So this could bring about many challenges of its own, as I'm sure you'd appreciate. However, once there has been an appointment and more of these reins are being handed over to the tertiary educated, talented daughters for whom the emergence of a private office is imperative. So what are we seeing, as per your question? We're seeing more of a dilution of the old family office space in lieu of a new recruitment drive to get the best talent out there, where name your price approach is being manifested. And also we're seeing new approaches to leadership styles in line with the, as I've off-cited, the Gulf Arab leadership style, which is still very much the majlis, and also new approaches to investments. Asset management takes on, a different approach also, with major sell-offs of previously acquired fixed asset sell-offs, and the acquisition of new fixed assets, particularly in the hotspots of, for example, London or Geneva, etc. And the new matriarch is looking to acquire new fixed assets in line with the new matriarch's strategic approach to family offices. So we are seeing the emergence really of a hybrid model of the old family office and the emergence of a new private office structure, which is being very finely balanced to not only gain high fiscal returns, but also for the daughter, the female lead, to prove herself to the patriarchs ostensibly, and also to the siblings. As per your question about location, we're seeing scores of Arab private offices opening up in Asia. For example, Singapore, of which I'm resident, is a hotspot. We are seeing private offices have doubled up in the last 5 years or so. And this will continue to grow as there is a big focus on Southeast Asia. Also, there's a flurry of private offices opening up in Saudi Arabia, where we've witnessed legislative, social and fiscal reform, which has made the kingdom a very attractive option with more governance and transparency, which is being warmly received. So we have this new drive for talent in Saudi Arabia, for example, the UAE, to set up these female-led private offices, which is increasing rapidly, and I predict will increase even more the next 5 years, certainly. And I predict more so in Saudi Arabia than anywhere else. What are they investing in? As I mentioned, there's a big appetite for fixed income bonds. Co-investment deals are very attractive. Tech, female-led startups, and there's an examination of the makeup of the corporate structure of companies before they invested, where there's, as I mentioned before, there's greater scrutiny on the how the company is set up and the board diversity, which I, as an advisor, I always examine myself. So there's this push for talent. There's an emergence of a new style of leadership with women at the helm. And it's mainly sort of emerging in the Gulf region, but a big focus on Asia.
You're absolutely right that the succession planning that you particularly highlighted is a very important aspect. And I recently was working on an assignment to make a single family office in DIFC, Dubai International Financial Center. So I felt that even ADGM, DIFC, they are quite friendly and very, very open arms for the family offices that they can register them. Even the amount, if I want to register a family office in UK, the threshold is quite high. And if I want to do it in Dubai, it's quite reasonable. And any family person can decide to be its own, whether it's the male or female.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Succession planning is really important. And what you suggest that when a woman make her own family office, so like here in Europe, US, generally we keep a certain portion for the social causes, social works, because of various reasons. It can be a taxation, or it can be a special focus of a family office on a particular cause. I mean, I saw someone's mother died with cancer, so he or she will be more inclined to work for cancer patients. They will build up research and hospitals. So every family office has its own inclination towards the social causes. So if we create a scenario that there is a rich woman, and Middle East is interesting because 30% of women own $1 billion of dirhams, which is really unique in the rest of the world. The money is in the hand of a woman, not in the man. So that's really exciting, because in other part of the world, only a woman get a wealth when you get divorced. So the property will be half off. Then she will be getting some money. So this was a joke apart, of course. So my question is that if there is a woman, she is a rich woman, she make her own family office. So in which way she can help women in terms of bringing a change in the women's world?
Yeah, that's quite an important question, and I think there's always a jostling of position as the female leader establishes herself and her new private office. And as I said, there's a legacy of managing the assets that she has acquired by the patriarch while launching a new diversified investment portfolio, which would include, as you mentioned, social causes, the ESGs. There's also a greater focus on philanthropic investments, legacy investments. There's a massive sort of key verticals are sort of emerging within private offices where philanthropy is very, very important and gaining prominence. And, it's part of this portfolio of management that is being looked at. Also, other things that sort of are looked at is the managing of risks and costs associated with operating the entity itself. So cost analysis is very, very important. And, sought after and trusted COOs as myself and CIOs have never had so much importance, I would say, as well as offshore trust providers. The offshore trust is not going anywhere. So these remain very, very important. And having a council of trusted advisors with the emergence of the private office is very, very important. I see lots of gatekeepers, and I call them gatekeepers. And one must be very wary of the unqualified advisor, the unqualified professional, and particularly the female leader with these new private offices sprouting up everywhere. And the new Arab female leader understands that with the expansion of these private offices, there's always a risk that, possibly capital can be quickly diluted unless a sensible wealth preservation strategy and governance structure is put into place to secure the prosperity for future Arab generations. There is also a review of the balance of power of either recruiting well and handling investments in-house, which is more effective in the long run, more cost effective, or continuing to outsource to third-party professionals, which is, as we know, more expensive in the long run. So you have this balance of power. And operating costs are being more scrutinized now more than ever before, because we understand there was a big capital leakage over the decades of, to be very frank, in looking at the balance sheets myself, dilution of capital where, tens of millions been paid out to professionals. So bringing things in-house is also a growing trend, sort of gaining talent, retaining talent, and beefing up the corporate structure of personnel. There's also quite a large degree of diplomacy that takes place. You have, on the one hand, the risk-averse patriarchs of yesteryear, many of whom have been very disappointed by the wrong advice in their approach to investments, versus today's female leaders' approach with a riskier investment appetite, who are open to new opportunities and diversifying away from the original real estate from years ago. Women now are open to fund investment, particularly fixed income, private equity, and startups, as well as, I mentioned, the social causes and the philanthropy causes, which are fast gaining momentum. And I think also what's very, very important as we sort of build up the private offices across the Gulf and in Southeast Asia is good governance, which is very important for overseeing the bridge into today and in the coming decade. It's a big focus at the moment.
This family office management require a specialist and an authentic financial advisor. And I think that it's a tough competition where there are Swiss banks and other banks sitting in the Gulf, and they are advising, while there are consultants, there are financial advisors. So the market is really tough and hard. And in that scenario, of course, I always wish good luck to our friends that they
exactly. I mean, the market is quite saturated at the moment with advisors. There's advisors coming out of everyone's ears at the moment. And, the new Savia principle, the female principle, I think is wise to entrust a new set of professionals, not only the inheritance of professionals from the Father's Council, but putting together a team of in-house professionals to co-manage her corporate affairs. And I say co-manage because the female principals with whom I work really have their eye on the ball. They are tertiary educated. They are most of them have MBAs. They are scrutinizing accounts. They are scrutinizing advice they receive. And every week we are, being asked by other advisors, other sort of professional service providers on how they can, get their foot in the door. So there's a jostling of positions, and the new female principal is very, very savvy, because the key here is agility. The corporate agility of the female-led private office is becoming very, very important. And innovation is imperative, where one focuses on long-term growth strategies for wealth, as well as incorporating the internal and external stakeholder priorities. And quite interestingly, I think, many of the female principals remain invisible. Some of the female principals are not visible at all. They prefer to operate away from the public, and certainly away from any sort of conferences or any speaking engagements in public. So they remain very much under the radar. Discretion is key, and trust is imperative. So as the team is built up, it's a team of trust, it's a team of professionalism, good governance, and legacy building.
That's amazing. I think these are very, very important points. And I just want to put my input in that. I got blessed last 15 years. I trained a lot of excellencies, his and her both. I found them when they were 20 years maybe. Some of them I taught myself as CFA, and they qualified also. And some of them I taught CPA for accountancy and better management, because they are 3-4 brothers. So one is taking a role, and other is into investments. So I guess that the youth is really updated. They speak English like us, and they like global. They are raised in America, some are in UK. So it's a very, very easy and very, very, you can say, what I feel is interactive with them, because they respond to you. Maybe unlike 40 years before, the trends were a bit different, and now the trends are really encouraging and exciting. With this, I would request you to please conclude your remarks for the day.
Thank you so much, Musa. So how will I conclude? Just with the prominence of the female-led private office, I'm very proud of this flurry of activity in the Gulf region. I'm very proud as a British-born Arab woman to be an advisor to these private offices. And it's very also important to note that as these private offices gain prominence, as they beef up their advisory personnel, their corporate structures, they work alongside legislation of localized governments in the Gulf region. And there continues to be a need to nudge governments so that at the policy level, so that further laws can be enacted to ensure equality of payment to male and females, ensure that women have equal opportunities, as well as ongoing professional developments. It also helps empower women to lead the future family offices in the future, and to develop corporate strategies and ambitious projects. So if we look at, for example, Morocco's 2004 law, the Madawana, and the Saudi Vision 2030, which have put a focus on equality and promoting social change, this goes hand in hand with the private sector that will guarantee, I think, how we look and how we approach this new female leadership in the private office, or as I would call it, the feminization of the Arab family office, where we find female principals approach their investments, their corporate structures with their empathy and leadership.
Talk for the day, and I want to thank you for joining us, and I'm looking forward to have you in our shows again.
Thank you so much, Musa and team. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.